which ought to come in about a minute or a second. Uh-oh. Got it. Good afternoon and welcome to the Thursday, May 8th, 2025 City Council Oversight Committee meeting. We have two items on the agenda. The first of these is to update on the emergency shelter operation. Mallory and Sean.
Hi, I'm Sean Lloyd with City Care. This is
Mallory Lee with City Care, the director.
she is the director of our night shelter operation in Norman, and it's been a few months since we've been here, so I'm going to give some updates on just some of the data and kind of some of the trends we identified and kind of what we've been working on for the past couple of months since last time I've seen you guys. And so year to date, you know what, I'm getting kind of old finally, and sometimes I got to pull my glasses off to read, which is the opposite of what most people have to do. But so I'll probably put these things on and off 30 times. So nights of rest, we provided 5,869, and that's that number's a little higher than what we would at just the 52 beds for the amount of time it's been. But of course, it was due to winter, and that's keeping our average nightly average at 56, which technically right now we're actually functioning at 52, but it'll take a little bit for that number to come down on a yearly basis. One thing that we found quite interesting though is that our unique count or our individuals served is 216 at this point, which is quite high considering the numbers we've come back with on the point in time. But I think we all know that point in time is a great temporary look at kind of where we're at. To run the unduplicated numbers for the whole city, we can usually get kind of a better count of, you know, how many maybe moms or families or different people are staying with someone, or possibly, you know, in a hotel on some rental funds or some assistance funds.
Is that a January, since that's 216 unique individuals since January 15th?
Yes, sir. Okay. Yeah, that is since January 15th, which is, man, I didn't imagine it would be that high, honestly, but that's what it is. Housing assessments, everybody knows what the CHAD assessment is. So we are doing CHAD assessments, and we've done 76 so far since we took over operations on January 15th. We didn't actually really get going on the chat until the beginning of April. So we've done 76 since then. And connected to housing total, that's 6 people. And so 2 people that we had spoke about previously, and then we'll go a little bit more into the other 4 as we kind of go through this information a little bit. Some of the demographics that kind of help us identify like what trends are, what needs are, is self-reported chronic. And so the reason we use the self-reported chronic is because a lot of times people might have been accessing services in another city, or they might not have been accessing services at all in a lot of cases. And so we can usually use that self-report number to kind of put together a picture of places they might have received a service that might not participate with COC, or, you know, if they live outside of a 7-Eleven, like we can put together the time they spent there, and then we can ask the 7-Eleven possibly for a letter stating that the person is experiencing homelessness, which helps with services. But we've had 83 of those people self-report chronic homelessness. And so that means HUD definition is 4 times in 3 years, totaling 12 months, or the last 12 months straight is what HUD defines chronic homelessness as. Also, our count on veterans is really high. It's 12, which for the amount of, you know, people we're seeing at a time, 12 is a really high veteran count. I think we're functioning with right about 9 in there right now, which is well over 10%. That's almost 20% of the people in our shelter right now are veterans, which is very, very surprising. Out of the 216, 109 people have reported a mental health disorder. And so with that amount of people reporting mental health, we need to keep our focus on getting people connected to services, and with people getting connected to disability services, possibly if they are unable to work.
How many was that?
109. Physical disabilities, we've had 82 people report physical disability. And so I've got a little later in this report our numbers on people in shelter who receive disability or SSI and SSDI or SSI, and it's incredibly low considering that we've had so many people report disability. Domestic violence, we've had 98 people report domestic violence, and that's not in this paperwork, but I do remember as I was looking, I think about 50 of them have had some kind of domestic violence situation in the last 6 months, which a lot of our people who have experienced, homelessness long enough to be chronic have definitely dealt with domestic violence. There are some move arounds with HUD law. If somebody is fleeing domestic violence, you can pull them into COC lists and you can kind of move them up in those lists based off a domestic violence case. But
Are they generally female or are they generally male? Or?
that's a good question. It would depend what you were defining domestic violence as, but as a total definition, it's a good mix of both, because if someone was literally outside of a store and somebody came up and took their wallet, like that's still domestic violence. But a lot of the people fleeing usually are females. Yes. On gender and age, our shelter's broken up. What's the count on women's beds in the shelter?
23.
And the men's bed is
All the way from 23 to 52, so 27?
27, yeah.
Okay.
So it's broken about 50-50 in the shelter, but we're still seeing more males than females. So we've had 139 males, 73 females, and 4 people. The government calls it non-binary. I obviously don't like that description, but anybody who identifies as anything besides male or female, our government unfortunately calls it non-binary.
How many were those again? How many non-binary?
4.
folks? 4. So
Yeah.
that could be trans, actual non-binary.
Absolutely,
Okay.
yes. Yes, that's absolutely right.
And how many, you said 139 males
Yes, sir.
and females?
And 73 females, yes. In our age breakdown, there has been quite a growth in aging population and homelessness over the past few years. One thing that we've seen in the past quarter was an uptick in like working age males, like basically from 35 to about 64, we saw quite an uptick in numbers. And so that's usually kind of about on par in other cities as well. But with our age breakdowns, at 55 to 64, we've got 46 people, and then 65 plus, we have 18 people. So anybody who's 65 plus should automatically qualify for some kind of SSI benefit. And so we'll look at our numbers a little bit in a second too around how many people we actually have receiving SSI or SSDI. And some of the people that we've helped cross that threshold since we made that identification. I think last time I talked a little bit about veteran services because we started to identify how high the amount of veterans were in this shelter system, which is high compared to other cities. And so we increased our efforts. With veterans in accessing services. And so we put together a system where HUD VASH and SSVF are coming out to the shelter once a week with their outreach teams. And because of that, we were able to help some people walk into housing. And we were able to connect 5 additional veterans to services. And going into this month, so for the last month, I think we housed 4 people total. And right now, if everything goes as planned, which it rarely does, so I don't even know why I'm saying that, we're on par for about 7 to go into housing for this month. So everybody, cross your fingers, ask your God or whatever it is you do, that all that keeps going through. So yeah, we were able to house 2 veterans in the last month with HUD-VASH vouchers. The cool thing about HUD-VASH vouchers are, no matter what's going on with local vouchers for public, HUD-VASH has a completely different set of rules and laws. Quite frankly, because our veterans deserve that, right? But we were able to access HUD-VASH vouchers, and then we were able to access SSVF funds to help people walk into housing to pay those things that they might not have had money in their pocket for. Extreme weather. So we served 10 fewer guests last month than we had served the previous month. And so that's probably because we did have some cold weather days the previous month. The hard part is we go out of the cold and we go straight into rainy tornado weather. And we still added 51 individuals to our waiting list last month. So even with what little bit of leeway we do have for opening times and stuff, like, we still just don't really have enough capacity if we're adding 51 people. I mean, we've seen 216 in 4 months, and we literally turned away 51 people in the last 30 days. That's quite a bit. I think the thought of that, looking at future shelter operations, is something we should definitely look at if the capacity is right now, or if we need to right size it for what we're really seeing regularly.
Yes, sir.
So I understand that as there is turnover happening,
Yes.
but you're still ending up with a wait list, even with turnover happening.
Yes, sir. Yes.
With 50-ish capacity and 216 individuals since January 15th, so
Yes, and
almost 4 months.
Yeah, last month it was 94. It was 94 unique guests, and we still added 51 people.
Speaking of like the future, would there be greater turnover in the population if there was like a dedicated day shelter situation where people, didn't work on stuff because it was evening, but then they're going in the day, getting further on their housing track? And is there something like that currently that's helping to get, 4 people housed? Are they having to do it all at night, or are you partnering with other places during the day?
That's a good question. I think right now there's some day operation at Thunderbird House, and then there's some day operation at Food and Shelter. We have been providing case management and housing navigation on site at the shelter. And so our navigator's time actually kind of fluctuates. Half of it is before the shelter opens, and half of it is after the doors open. And that's for a couple of reasons. One, they do all of our intakes because we're like really hard about making sure our data's right, because we just feel like that's the only way really to identify what to do next, is with good solid data. Also, a lot of the people we do work with, they are open during the day. And so we fluctuate those navigator hours to where they can have the ability to communicate or contact or work with apartment complexes or other service providers during the hours that they're actually open. Also, I know that I think we've taken 16 people to apply for public housing, and so here in Norman, and so we do have to get our guests there during operational hours for Norman Housing Authority. So it's kind of a mix. The question about, I don't know exactly how to answer the first part of your question.
I mean, it's our long-range goal to have a 24/7, 365 day and night operation.
That's right.
As laid out in the home-based action plan.
Yes.
And I know
It's a good plan too.
we're off base. It said June 2023. I think we have one.
Yeah.
Still looking around, but you know, and to some previous, well, he's still on council. He's just not here. But Councilmember Nash also recognized, throwing people out at 7 a.m.
Yeah.
It's not really helpful.
Yep, so, yes, daytime operations would be quite beneficial. And there are some service providers locally who are providing some day shelter operations. And in that, I believe Norman Caravans, right, is transporting our people from us to the daytime options in the morning. If daytime options and overnight options were side by side, that would be a lot more convenient. Then, you know, maybe we wouldn't have to rely on inclement weather transportation or some of the things that make transportation a little more tough. But I would agree that there has to be overnight and daytime options. Sometimes that gets really hard on one facility because quite frankly, this business is rough on property and facilities. And so it's quite beneficial to be able to have somewhere for people to go during the day so that we can clean up and get the night operation back ready for night, and then vice versa for the two. Shelter utilization and employment focus. So, you know, contrary to popular belief that people experiencing homelessness don't have jobs or don't work or have income, that's not always a clear, true picture. But since January 15th, we've served the 216. Of those, 149 are between the ages of 35 and 55. And that's a working group that could benefit more from targeted relationships with job programs or with possibly Goodwill, or is it still called the Moore Norman VOTEC?
Yeah.
Tech Center?
Career
Tech
Tech.
Center.
Not supposed
Career
to call it
Tech.
VOTEC anymore.
Oh, you can't call it VOTEC anymore? Okay.
It's my understanding too that they might have money for helping low-income folks. Okay,
Yes.
so be very, you know, if you could get them there, I think we struggle with the transportation,
Okay.
and they're not on a bus route. So, it is, you know, I guess CPTC is where we talk about that the most, but it has been identified as a gap.
Okay, good.
And then I was gonna say May 9th, which is tomorrow, we'll have the ribbon cutting, if, as it were, for the day labor van, which
Oh, yeah.
I would
Oh,
hope
yeah.
would
I
come
forgot
by
about that.
at 7 a.m. maybe and find some people who want some day labor.
What time is your ribbon cutting?
Is there-
3 p.m.?
I don't know, I don't have city phone on me right now.
I can email you the information.
That would be great. Yeah, thank you.
It's 11.
11
It's
a.m.
at 11.
11?
Just started.
I'm gonna get confused. I have I got 3 different times written down here. So if I'm texting you guys,
And I would say it's analogous to a Better Way program in OKC, so if City Care's got experience partnering with that kind of program, that's what that will be essentially.
I am familiar with that. It was a Department of Mental Health program in Oklahoma City. I am somewhat familiar with the program.
So,
Yeah. Okay, so many of the people in that group, they are eligible for disability if we base that purely off of the amount of people reporting either physical or mental disabilities. Developmental qualifies as well, but I don't know if there's a demographic question on developmental disability. I think there has to be. I just don't think it's reported much, actually.
do you see young people with learning disabilities? Like I met one a couple summers ago who was waiting to go to SISU. And he had been at Dimensions previously and dropped out. He told me he had a learning disability. So I don't know if you can get disability assistance if that's something.
Yes, you absolutely can, yes.
We do have a young person who's has disability. Her and her mother both stay with us, and mother's kind of her caretaker in a sense, but she does get disability.
So good, So we've set up a way to track in our HMIS system, the places we're making referrals to, exactly how many every one of our navigators referrals are making, and what kind of advocacy points they're having when they're making those referrals. And so one of the things we are able to track is exactly how many people we've referred to some kind of employment service. And right now we're at 11. And so I do know that number's actually higher, but we just finished the build out on being able to track that stuff in the last month. So something we've been working on for a while with our other facilities as well. Disability benefits with older adults. So we helped 4 people start receiving their SSI in April. And so that's 4 people who were of age to receive SSI but didn't know what the process was or how to actually get set up to receive those funds. And so in April, we got 4 people set up to start receiving that. And so our total's up to 24 people who are receiving SSI, or most of them were already currently receiving SSI, but we added 4 to that. 20 guests are receiving Social Security disability. So 20 out of the roughly 200 people who report disability are actually receiving disability services. We can look at that a couple of ways. One, we could say that a lot of the people who report disability could possibly still work, which is true, and a lot of the people have started the process and been denied, or started the process and didn't have a permanent address, because it's quite an extensive process to go through getting Social Security disability. And a lot of times if people's having a letter mailed that's asking them to do something in a 10-day period, quite frankly, they never receive the piece of mail and they automatically get kicked out. And so we did set up mail service with the Postal Service, which was quite interesting, actually.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yeah, you would, yeah, it was quite interesting.
Many obstacles.
Yeah,
Yes.
but we got mail, so
Yes.
so it's going. Or we could look at or we could look at it as those people have been unsuccessful at getting through that process. I do know, like in Oklahoma City, we did have a lot of times where you would apply somebody for the process and they would automatically get a denial letter that if you didn't make a return on, you're automatically kicked out. And a lot of people get that first letter and they're just like, well, if I didn't get it, because they just quite frankly don't know that you just have to respond to those letters. And we do have a guy who comes out weekly and he's working with our people to go through those claims. And we have 2 navigators right now are currently being SOAR certified. So we've had 16 people referred to our guy who comes in that's helping people walk through the SSDI claims as well. And so those 16 that we've signed up all happened in April also. So, I mean, if we can average 16 to 20 people to start those claims monthly, then we should be able to somewhat quickly flow through getting people more ability to start to receive income. The hard part is that's a slow process. You know, it's not like SSI where we could literally have somebody being paid out in a month. It usually takes 8 months to 2 years to get through the SSDI process. So it's slow. We also had a guest move into skilled nursing. And so a lot of our people who are of age to receive SSI, a lot of them qualify for skilled nursing or retirement homes or places that we can use a Medicaid claim to help somebody walk into sustainable housing where they will actually receive that care that many of our guests need.
So on the employment part, how many people stay at the shelter would you say are in good health, no mental disability, no physical disability, potentially are younger and able-bodied?
right?
Can work, don't need to be homeless, and they're just choosing to stay at the shelter because they want to.
I don't have a piece of data to answer that, but I will say probably none or one just want to be at the shelter. But we do have people who are working, and we do also have people that could work as well, and maybe, just need some assistance finding employment, or quite frankly, need a second chance employer. Maybe they have a felony, maybe they've had some bad luck in the past, or but I don't have an answer for you. I can tell you though, that from 18 to 64, which is theoretically the cutoff, that's a majority of our people. That's a majority of that 216.
Sounds like most people in the shelter are either, and I guess, have mental disability, physical disability, or they have an income like Social Security that
Yes,
they may not be able to afford a place in Norman,
That's right.
or they may have other issues that prevent them from easily obtaining employment or
Yes, sir.
housing. It seems like it's almost all of one of those, or a combination of all three of them even,
Yes, sir.
essentially, or whatever.
A lot of times with our people who, right now we're concentrating on the people who can't go to work, on getting on that SSDI or SSI. But like you said, you're right. It's really not even enough to rent, and so without a concentration of vouchers dedicated towards people experiencing homelessness, then we're kind of stuck flopping around trying to get people who are compatible enough to live together and become a household. And we did have one person move into permanent housing with a couple of other guys as well in the last month. So it's possible, and I did speak about that before. I think when I was here about getting people to move in and become roommates, but that comes with a whole nother bag of tricks sometimes, because the compatibility. I mean, I'm sure all of us here have probably had a roommate at some point, and sometimes it's pretty tough. But we did have one person that we didn't have a voucher route for, and our navigators got him teamed up with a couple other people, and they rented a place together. So it's possible, and God willing, it goes really well for her.
On the line of jobs, when people are getting hooked up with them, are you limited by the number of jobs in Norman and transportation? Are people when you're homeless, you got so many obstacles: clean clothes, a shower, a place to sleep. But then it's like, then you're gonna go to the job, and it's mainly Norman, somewhere you could get to by bus.
No.
I just see that being a limiting factor on what's available. And to the point of the felonies, are there entities that don't ask you to check the box? And how many of those do we actually have in Norman?
So,
Go ahead.
I don't mean to interrupt you. We actually have a list of felony-friendly jobs that are located here in Norman. It's a very long list, and everybody who is a felon, we give them the opportunity to look over the list and see what opportunities they would consider. As far as transportation, that is a struggle they deal with regarding, employment. We did have a lady that got employed, and she struggled getting back and forth to work. I think Caravan dropped her off once or twice, but it was kind of out of their route. And so she ended up getting her first check, and she was Ubering back and forth. And so it's because the bus route doesn't go everywhere, it is difficult when we set somebody up for a job and then get them to their interview, and then they get the job, and then they get let down because they can't get to the job because of transportation. But for the most part, a lot of them, it's getting them just kind of their foot in the door. We have a donation closet where we do have dress clothes and things that are donated, so we try to get them really fixed up and help them, kind of get ready for the interview. But for the most part, it's been a process. It kind of, you hit obstacles all the way around, but transportation's kind of been the most challenging.
What time does the bus route stop?
A 9.
9 p.m.?
Yeah, at 9 p.m. Yeah, and so we have people that take the bus and they come in on the last bus and they have to let us know because they're coming in late because we close the door at 6. So the people who are catching the bus are at least, going to work and coming in and letting us know and everything. But the ones who are having to find rides and catch rides, it's a little bit more difficult because they don't know when they are going to be able to come in and when they're not. There's been some times when caravan's been late and they've had to inform us, hey, they're going to be late, or, they didn't stop by here today. So the transportation is just kind of iffy when it comes to their job opportunities. So it's kind of an uphill battle for them.
Okay. Stuff for CPTC, right? And then the other thought was for the folks that did get housed, I think I heard 4. Were they able to find housing in Norman, or did they have to move out of Norman to find housing?
This was in Norman.
I believe they were all in Norman.
Yeah, they're all in Norman.
Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, they were all in Norman. We were able to access some funding from some Oklahoma City sources that come from a large foundation that's granted to City Rescue Mission. And so we partner really well with them. And so we were able to access some Oklahoma City funding to help get a few of our folks down here housed. And then the people that we housed on vouchers, of course, they were SSVF vouchers because right now there's no vouchers.
Yeah, that part looks bleak.
I know it does, but this is honestly like we've seen it numerous times in other cities. It just sometimes it happens. You just got to get creative and find other routes. And then hopefully at some point you get everybody signed up you can, and then a year down the road their vouchers will finally start to pop up, and then you start getting those vouchers applied to the units they're already in. And then sometimes you don't.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Documentation assistance. That's always a common barrier everywhere for people experiencing homelessness, is having the proper documentation. I know, like the housing authority here in Norman, we had till the 1st to get everybody applied that we could because they were closing the application list. And to apply, you have to have license, right? You have to have ID, you have to have social security card, but here you also have to have a birth certificate. And so we've been focusing in really hard on getting those things provided for guests, but we had to focus in even harder because we had a deadline on when we could apply people. So if they haven't applied by the 1st of this month, you can apply in Norman for housing assistance anyways. So we have been successful at getting 30 people set up with McFarland to obtain IDs. But since then, we have worked with First Presbyterian Church of Norman and McFarland, and we now have vouchers in shelter. And so when we have people who come in, we've got vouchers ready on site to be able to take people to go get IDs now, which is really handy. And I think most of the providers locally have some kind of way, shape, or form to get that done, but quite frankly, we're new on the block and we just got that secured and we're kind of excited about it. So I'm gonna just kind of summarize kind of where we're at, what we talked about. Over the past month, we've helped 4 individuals secure housing. That brings our total to 6. And like I said, we're on track right now to see hopefully another 7 going into housing for this month, which is really exciting. And that's without the ability to access local vouchers. We've begun the process to apply for some of those funding sources here locally to be able to build out some of the programming to where we do have some of the funds and we're not having to look as heavy towards religious entities or entities in other cities to get the funding we need to walk people into housing or get their needs met. So of those housed, we had 2 veterans that moved in with HUD-VASH vouchers with SSVF resources. We had 1 individual move in with roommates without a subsidy, and another transitioned into a skilled nursing retirement facility because they weren't able to meet their own needs, and 2, there was a holdup because they weren't currently receiving SSI and they had no Medicaid or Medicare. So those are the things that got lined up, and then some work with the hospital, and we got them into skilled nursing. We've advanced our work around disability claims. Our navigators are becoming SOAR certified, like right now currently. 16 individuals have started filing for SSDI, and we've established a partnership with churches to secure essential documents like those birth certificates. We've actually, the First Presbyterian Church has actually provided a fund as well for us to be able to get those birth certificates, because it's not a deal where we can have a deal with a local tag agency or a DMV to get people's IDs because they're coming from all over the country sometimes, but most of the time they are from Oklahoma. But even at that, we can't just go to the DMV or to a tag agency to get a birth certificate. So thankfully, the church has provided some of those items for us. In terms of service delivery, our housing navigation team has made 95 referrals total with 300 instances of advocacy support. Our HMIS system now allows us to track referrals and advocacy efforts by navigator, providing a clear picture of service providers that are receiving the most referrals in Norman. So when they're making those referrals, we literally have a drop-down list for every single provider that a referral from us has been made to, and we can give you a direct count of how many referrals we made to every one of those service providers and what an outcome was. What we hope to come out of that is we hope to be able to identify who we are using the most referral-wise and who we're having the most success with, so that we can kind of focus our concentration on those partnerships. And I think that's about all I have. Do you have anything you want to add?
So, not unless you guys have questions.
Just a couple little ones. One of the things I'd asked the previous operator of this to keep track of is the number of people that we find housing for, and to see how many of them come back, and like the time frame, if they're, I mean, hopefully that number's 0, right?
Right.
It's not, but yes.
But I mean, I'd just like to kind of keep track of that, if we can.
We can. I can talk to our HMIS provider, and he has a similar report already made that we can sometimes pull in Oklahoma City. It's a report where I just ask him and he gives me the number, but we can get that. Right now, it's too soon for me to have that information for you, because we're only months into this.
Sure.
But as we get 6 months in, we can look at, how many people have come back to homelessness in that 6 months, and then we can do it like, we could put that maybe on a 6-month interval, so we could see 6-month and yearly marks. One thing I can say, based off numbers of people in our PSH programs in Oklahoma City, is that as those time amounts get measured and they get greater, the greater we can keep those while they're still in PSH, the better chance people have of sustaining long-term housing, which is pretty cool thought.
And then I just wanted to mention too, and I'm not throwing fault at anybody, because I know this start off as an emergency shelter for just, a kind of defined set of time, and then
Sure.
it's kind of the mission creep has kind of happened, and it's fine. Just to say, I really appreciate you all putting a ton of effort into actually like all the help. Yeah, I know the other organization was doing it too. I'm not throwing any shade on them at all, but I just want to say I really appreciate going through all that and helping people with SSI and just birth certificates and all that, I do appreciate that. I think that's what, our community, I don't know if expects is the right word, but I think it's a lot easier to sell to our residents of, hey, we're not just housing people,
Right.
we're helping people, and it makes it easier. Doesn't make it easy on us,
Yeah.
but it makes it easier, so I truly appreciate that.
Thank you. We really appreciate that
Yes.
from you as well. I can tell you that on average it costs about $91 a day to not help somebody go into housing, which equals roughly about $35,000 a year. And in our PSH programs in Oklahoma City, we keep a person housed with wraparound services and case management for about $8,000 a year. So it's actually way less expensive to build out your PSH programming and have people housed in those units than it is to do nothing, quite frankly.
I was gonna say the do nothing model also doesn't help us with the situations on the street,
Yeah.
which also costs taxpayers and emergency services.
That's right. That's part of that $91 is those police contacts or the window that got broke out, or you know what I
I
mean?
was
Like,
gonna say emergency room trip, but yes.
that's exactly right too.
That's true.
Yeah, the fire department having to respond, I mean, that's,
Yes.
it's expensive every time that truck rolls out, so.
That's right.
But I mean, I've noticed really since you took over, but a significant reduction in people hanging out in front of the building on Gray Street. People seem to be hanging out on the side. Seems to be inside that fenced in area most of the time when I drive by now, or at least to the side, to the back. And so it seems like the outside's being managed pretty noticeably well. My experience anyway, driving past there a couple times a day. And I think that's just a little piece of it that it's, you know, I think I don't want them hidden in the sense that I think our community needs to know that they exist.
Yeah.
And that it is an issue and that we, you know, we could put them behind the building and nobody sees them, but it doesn't mean that the problem isn't still there. But it's also, I mean, we also understand, you know, if there's a large group of people just hanging out in front of the building in the afternoon and then in the morning, and how businesses feel about that, how visitors may feel about it. And it's, I can't imagine ideal for those guests to be just hanging out on the curb either. So the side area has seemed like an idea that's worked pretty well so far, at least in my observation. And I just hope we can continue working towards finding a permanent location for this, because I don't think there's, unless something drastically changes nationwide, I don't see this issue changing or going away.
I mean, if things go the way they're suggested they go, it's going to get worse fairly quickly, you know?
Yeah, I think we tried to foresee this in 2020 that due to the pandemic, it was likely that homelessness, housing affordability, healthcare, people having problems with all those things was going to get worse, and it has. And tried to turn our temporary shelter that didn't have a home, a permanent home, and make it a permanent home, and voters said no to that. But so we've just kept running it in limbo. And I would note too that, you know, in 2008, voters said no to building a new library, but we didn't shut down the library and say, well, voters said they didn't want to pay for a new library, so we just end library services. If voters say no to building a new police department, we're not going to shut down the operation of the police department because voters say no to building a new one and taking out debt. So I just want to encourage us to think about it from that perspective, that although voters may have said no to spending $5 million to build a permanent shelter that had no location, I don't think that means we stop operating a service that is clearly needed in our community. And that just that number of 51 people being on a waiting list when we are turning people over,
That's monthly also.
yeah, that's pretty astonishing, because then I'm like, where are those 51 people staying at tonight? So anyway.
We need to move along,
Yep.
if we may.
Yeah.
Very much appreciate your thorough work and your good work. and appreciate the effort she's putting into it.
Thank you.
It's, I agree with Councilmember Holman, the outside, just the outside appearance is so much better, it's so much nicer. And as we were talking about, Mallory and I were talking before you got here, I get complaints from people that you guys are too strict, and so I think you're doing the right thing.
We're actually not strict at all. We're low barrier.
Yeah, we're excited. Well, thank you all very much for
Thanks,
taking the
guys.
time and doing that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next item on the agenda, and I've got to run Stephen in about 5 minutes, is discussion regarding the open records request process from the city of Norman. And I asked Brenda to do this because it's a nagging thing with me that I don't know if she's gonna prove me right or wrong. That when we do open records requests, that we're losing money basically doing that. Are we charging the right fee? And I don't know. That's what she's figured out. And so, thank you.
In the list of Anthony's permits and fees, the first one.
Yeah,
Well, there's, we have limitations on what we can charge.
There's also
Yeah.
there's also
Thank
legislation
you.
coming.
I'll tell you about that a little bit, and
Okay.
it's really, I mean, I appreciate the effort, but
It's
it's
more.
not gonna really make anything different for us in
Okay.
Norman. Pretty much everything that they put in to the legislation, we could already do. It just kind of now spells it out. With the
Yeah.
exception of now, it says that cities may have them fill out a form and things like that. We were already doing that.
One was like, our representative meant that cities would just tell somebody we got it and you can expect it in X amount of days. And then the one with OML, I was under the impression that smaller municipalities were being asked to do like these extensive open record requests and would print out reams of paper, and then the person who requested would not come and collect on it. So,
That happens, yes. Okay, so we have a new record system, open records, software program that we purchased last year, and, it went live October 1st, basically. And it's been a game changer for me anyway, in our office. It allows a person to register, they create an account, everything comes through the portal. When I get it, I can assign it to different departments that have the data. They can actually, when they get the email, they can get the data that they have and load it right back into the portal. And we're seeing all of that, and then at the end, we can make it just available for the requester and staff, or we can make it public. And most of them, there's not any reason why you wouldn't want to make it public, but then they're on the website, so if somebody wanted to search something that's already up there that somebody already requested, that, would lower the amount of requests we would get. There's not a lot up there right now. Probably need to go back and change a few when I was looking, but to me, that was a huge selling point because we get a lot of duplicate requests on things. And probably the most difficult, since we started the new program October 1st, we've had 248 requests. And from July 1st through September 30th, we had 88. So altogether, this fiscal year, since July, we've had 336 requests. I will say that the most difficult always are going to be email requests. There's very laborsome on the legal department because they have to review all of those before they can be released and make sure there's not anything that shouldn't be released. Email requests are very specific, and people don't really understand this, but they'll give us search phrases or whatever. Well, the way our program works in IT, you can't do it by a phrase. You can put it in there, like, for instance, University North Park, but it's gonna search every email that has the word university in it, every email that has the word north in it. And so it pulls in thousands of emails, most of which they don't even want. And it just makes it really, really difficult for Rick and his team. And what he has done that has helped is he will make a printout, kind of like a ledger that shows like the date, what the subject was, of all of the thousands of emails that have been pulled, and send it to the requester and say, you look through this and narrow down, highlight the ones that you're more interested in, and then we will review those instead of reviewing 33,000. We just had one last week that's 33,000. I mean, we had one yesterday that they narrowed their search, so they thought, and he started it over and it was already up to over 10,000. So those are, without a doubt, the most difficult ones that create the biggest issue for us. And I don't know, I don't have any secret, answer or fix for it. But when we talk to, in my world at conferences and things, when we talk about, yes, it'd be great if the Open Records Act was modified somehow to just limit some of that. And I think that's what they were trying to do. But yeah, it didn't really work out too much. What they did add into it is that, we can, like I said, complete the form. We do that already. We're already able to charge a search fee or a particular fee if we have it on file, and we do. And this is currently all we're charging for. By state law, you can't charge more than 25 cents a page. And if you're printing paper copies or, this says 50 cents, but now it's gone up to $1, so I could change that, but I don't do a lot of certified copies anyway. But the search time and the research time is what is labor intensive, honestly. This new program, we're currently not tracking it, but we could start just to give us an idea of, kind of what it's costing us. It has the ability to track time. As the staff members putting documents in, they can log how much time they spent on it and put a dollar amount into that, and then it'll spit out at the end of a trial period or whatever about how much staff time and cost was involved. The difficulty with that is we would almost have to just come up with a flat staff hourly rate of $20 or something like that, because otherwise I'd have to go in and enter everybody's rate, and that would be really, yeah, you wouldn't be able to do that because, they may get a merit and then you have to go in there and change it. So we would do it if we wanted to. I was thinking we would either maybe do the flat $25 an hour that we charge now for research. And we only do this, the way the law is written, and Rick, jump in here when I get off base, but you have to have it on file that you do it, and you can only charge this research fee kind of thing if that's not, wait a minute, I'm getting off of base. You can require a deposit and that's what we've started doing with these huge email requests, just estimating how many, once IT has searched it and I know how many there are, we can kind of estimate how many days or whatever it's going to take them to do the research. And I'm reaching back out to them and to tell them, because it's staff intensive and it's disruptive to your daily duties, we're allowed to request that deposit before we start, because you're right. People will request this stuff and then we print it out and they never come and get it. And plus, under the Open Records Act, they also have the right to just examine the documents, like just come in and look at them. You don't have to print it or whatever.
Can people choose that?
But
Or not very often?
not very often. Stephen Ellis is probably the only one that does that a lot. But now with everything that's so easily scannable and then you send it on, faster you can move it on is my motto. So it's much easier to do that than copy and have them come down and do all of that stuff. So it's been, this new program I'm really excited about. I think it's helped a lot, at least me keep track of things. But you can see, like, just kind of peruse through this list, where the really long ones are, those are, a lot of those are email requests. Like this one, for instance, we had 9 that came in from the same person, and it was all emails for different staff people, and this was all related to OTA stuff. It was crazy number.
Wait, so some of this is like planning.
Oh, yeah.
Those are the departments that that I have to work with to get the documents.
Yeah, I was looking,
Most of it seems to be like plats.
I'm on the one that's open records requests since October 1st, 2024. And just seeing that like an engineering firm was looking for documentation permits.
Yeah, that's another thing I was gonna mention is I get a ton of requests for phase 1 environmental. There are companies that are doing the phase 1 environmental research for a customer, and so they ask for building permits, occupancy, certificate of occupancy, any code violations, zoning violations, or fire stuff. So all of those that you see with all those departments on it, that's what those are, and everybody has a piece that they put into the portal that we release all at once to the to the requester, and then they have access to all of it. And we do get duplicate requests for the same address, a lot.
So it'll be like a developer and different people on that person's team or legal team are reaching out for
Yes, sometimes it'll be two different like engineering firms asking for the same address, and I've always wondered how that works. I don't know why they have that many people doing it, but this program makes it much easier because I don't have to go ask for it again. It's already there, and I just pull it over into their request and move it on. So
My thought for this information would be to give us the ability to be able to, when the law changes, because probably not any use within an ordinance is gonna be changed by whatever state statute comes out.
right.
After that's over, to make us at least come out even, where it's not a matter of requesting information or anything else, but a lot of times it's these larger things, not so much the engineering things, even though they're big, but it's the larger things that are searches for all kinds of stuff. And we've got to be transparent in all the rest that we do, but to be able to give the city the ability to be able to charge that $25 an hour for things that are taking. Obviously, a small thing's not gonna take.
Yeah, I mean, some of those, they're running searches in their databases, planning and fire and code, and they can do that, post it in 10 minutes, 15 minutes. So a lot of it's gonna be like that, doesn't take that long. But there's other things like where my office is doing a lot of research and back in our archives, trying to pull things out for people, or sometimes we have requests for things like they want every purchase order, an invoice for a certain product. And it can be really huge. I got one right now that finance is working, or actually I think they finished it, where they wanted every, I can't remember what they call it, but basically it was a list. When I read that, I thought, oh my goodness, that's probably gonna be 100 pages, but it's easier for them to run the reports and load them much than go to drawers and pull files and making copies of things. So under the Open Records Act, we're not required to produce a document. So sometimes we'll get requests, we want this information and then I want it in this format and da-da-da-da. Well, if you don't already have that document or have the ability to print the report with that information, we don't have to create one. And, so we don't.
For the death, I'm making my way through. I see death certificate, birth certificate. Last I checked, that's not really the city.
It's not, and see, that's the other thing about this program, it's, I've set alerts up in it, and honestly, I just got it functioning right, today, because I had set it up wrong, but, for all of those requests, like birth certificates, death certificates, property tax records, marriage licenses, we get a lot of those, but we don't have access to them, so I've set up an alert when they start typing in a request, if they use the word birth or they use the word death, that it'll pop up an automatic message that I put in there that where they need to contact for that information. And so I think that's gonna help a lot now that I've finally got it functioning, because we get a lot of requests for county stuff, and I get a lot of requests for police records, and they actually have their own system over there. And so I just refer all of those directly to the links to fill it out for the police department. And so now that they're actually functioning, I'm excited to see how much that helps to just keep them from coming on in, so.
And I see people looking up code violations.
Yeah, we get a lot, and some of those I think are commercial, or people that have small lawn or cleanup operations, and so they'll get the code violation list so that they can reach out to these people that got violations and try to get a job to clean up their stuff or whatever, so it's various things.
Brenda, as it relates to the searches and how voluminous they can be when they have, like you said, University North Park, so now it's searching everything at the university and then searching everything. Who is performing, we are performing the search in-house?
Yes.
When they request? Is it, IT is doing it?
Yes,
Okay,
Daryl Clark.
and I would assume that in most searches, if you put quotes around what you're searching, it'll isolate that.
Yeah, well-
It doesn't work that way? Okay, ugh. Yeah,
That's why, that's what people don't understand, and believe you, Rick and I do understand it, especially Rick.
There's no, it searches the word.
just the word, it's not it doesn't give you delimiters or anything like that.
Yeah, you can't
where
do phrases.
Oh,
So do people also ask for how bids were allocated by taken in by the city and how somebody won it?
Yeah, I get those a lot, and a lot of times those are, what do they call them? Bid houses, or people like Dodge Report. They post it on a website so contractors can see
What we scored.
RFPs and like what we have open, and I get several of those a week sometimes from different plan houses, that's what they're called. Or they'll keep the plans on file and they're on their website actually, I think, and so that contractors can get to that to see it and make a bid. And then, yeah, we do get requests for the results as well, but
So everything, the police just handle like police reports. If it's a municipal court, it comes through the clerk's office, or does municipal court have their own?
no, it comes through the clerk's office, and I send it to court, and they get tons of requests too that don't come to me for,
Citations.
yeah. Yeah, or do they have a record, do they have any outstanding citations, things like that. But they're able to do that really quickly too, it doesn't take as much time for them, so, I mean, I am kind of curious, and so I think I'm going to, because there's probably less than 30-ish staff people that are tied into the system, because that's the ones that I get all the requests for, so to have them actually track their time, I mean, it's really easy, you just click on the button and you put in how much time you spent on it, and then we could see after like a trial period, kind of what the cost would be for that, but.
It also looks like animal welfare requests come through y'all as well.
But not the police department?
The police department, I mean, if they didn't have a separate system over there, then yes, they would still come through me, but they actually have, you know, they have their own records clerk and everything, and they have, a lot of the stuff that comes in for them are body cam videos, and they have one person that just does redaction and stuff, theirs is way more laborsome than mine even, but they,
Yeah.
Since the shelter's under the police department, does it, an open records for the animal shelter, does that not come through the police department?
no, I still handle those because they don't have those records over there. I mean, everything that I send over there are records that they're going to produce, like the citation itself or a criminal history, I mean, things like that. And a lot of it is for camera footage. They get a lot for that.
I was gonna say, this one just caught my eye because it was somebody who ended up with one of our dogs from the, My Dog is My Co-Pilot, or Dog is My Co-Pilot program. So it's dogs we shipped off to Oregon, and they wanted more information. So yeah, I'm surprised by the different requests you get and all the different departments they hit, and actually the flow chart, if you will, of how those requests are fulfilled.
And I don't know, what do you think about the new program, Rick? About how it's set up?
I think it's helpful, I like it. I mean, our issue is gonna be with the emails. And
Just narrowing it down.
some of the things that I've learned over the years are things like this. If you do a request for emails and it's gonna search every term, you're gonna pull in a whole bunch of stuff that the person probably really is not interested in, doesn't want. But because of the nature of the program, that's just how it works. From our perspective, I remember looking at an email request one time, and it was between the police chief and the superintendent for the school district. It was really initially about setting up a time to meet or something. But then the superintendent emailed back specific information about the juvenile that was listed and was wanting information about that. Now, we can share juvenile information with the school district where the school is enrolled, but we can't make that information public. We can't go to somebody in the public without a court order. And the penalty is it's a misdemeanor for us to disclose that information. So when I'm reviewing these emails, you can't just base it on what you see in the subject line. You probably need to look at the substance of it, because there may be something in there that really isn't indicated in the substance, but yet you shouldn't be producing it.
Do you call that, or do you just black it out?
It depends. If it were a part of a string, where part of the string is producible and part of it isn't, you can redact it. Usually the way that it tends to work is, so we'll send the request to Daryl Clark. Daryl Clark will run the search. It creates a PST file, which you open in Outlook, which just looks like the emails in your Outlook. Like Brenda was saying, when I get really, really huge ones, you can print the emails out on a table that just shows you date, subject matter, and who it's from. So I'm gonna print that table out, and I'm gonna give it to you and go, you need to look through this and pare this down. Look through this and tell me which one of these you want me to look at, which means I'm not gonna have to look at all of them, because I'm sure you don't want all of them.
And also pay for all of them.
That's hold on, that's the other part, that's the difficulty. So I've given you the table, you've given it back to me, I can now pull out the emails that you actually want me to look at. And then somebody has to review those to make sure there's nothing in there that we shouldn't be giving to the person. The problem is, and I can print that on a PDF format, and then I've got the full version of Adobe, which allows me to redact stuff if I need to. And I redact stuff like, occasionally there's cell phone numbers, maybe somebody sent us a private cell phone number, you just don't want it to be out in the public. The problem is now that person's gonna want it digitally. I want you to email me that PDF file as opposed to printing it out. So if it's 900 pages, or if you printed it out, you would be able to collect 45 cents a page for that 900 pages. The act doesn't tell me, or does not have a pricing in there for if I send it to you electronically.
Is that where the research hours comes in? Is that,
It doesn't really specifically define research. I mean, and for us, the way that, in the old days, it was kind of easy, because before we got the program that we have, you would just search for it in that Outlook sort of search engine, and it would hang up a lot, and it would take a long time just to do the actual search. Now the search takes that long. It doesn't take that long at all. I'll make it a PST file. I mean, depending upon the size of the database, I'll make it a PST file pretty quickly from Daryl. The time limit that goes along with that that's difficult is the time it takes to review all of them. One of these email databases in here has 100,000 emails.
Did they narrow it down or they wanted all of them?
Nope, didn't narrow it down. A lot of times if it's the media, because I think the media does understand and doesn't want to put that much of a burden on staff, they'll usually come in and ask for something specific. I want this, so we can go find that and give it to them if we have it. A lot of times it's the fishing expedition. I don't really know what I want. I think there may be something nefarious in some email that some city employees. So I give you this broad search parameters and I come up with this database that's just ridiculously large. And then the issue becomes, somebody's got to look through that, but the statute really isn't clear how much I can charge.
So if they're, are you following what they're working on currently, especially in regard, on the well, I say OML, because they're the ones that are.
Yeah, I had some input into that, so yeah, I am. I mean,
Okay.
OML, it was me, David Weatherford, Christian Reinhardt, John Miller from Mustang, all sort of were giving, Christian was the person that was negotiating with the Press Association to sort of try to come up with something that was workable, but you still have the issue of, it says you can charge a $75 deposit, but the question becomes, okay, if there's the part in the statute that talks about, usually you can't, if the press says we're doing this for an article, you can't charge them a search fee. But the question becomes, what if it's a private citizen? But they're gonna come in and say, I'm operating in the public interest, so if there's a fee, please waive it. And then there's not really a metric for documents that are produced digitally. I mean, it was written for stuff that you would print.
I think they were responding to issues in smaller cities.
That's pretty easy, but for us, the bigger issue for us has to do with the time it takes to go through all those emails.
So was that brought up with them when they were working?
I think we did bring it up with them, but it really did not seem to make its way into the current version of that bill. But that's what we struggle with. That's where the cost comes in. For the longest time, I'm the person that did all those reviews when I was the 3. And you probably don't want to pay me to sit for days on end and just look at emails. But once we're backed up right now with a couple of them. And there was ones that we produced, about 2-3 months ago. Literally, it took me 2-3 days to get through.
That makes it difficult. Okay, so the other one that may have been passed already, that I mentioned before, Representative Mentz, was just saying a notification that you got the request and an estimation like you'll get it in 30 days or whatever. That doesn't seem like that would be, it'd be hard to estimate some of these other ones.
It is, because it obviously depends on what else is going on.
Yeah, I mean, like, and if you tell somebody, hey, it's gonna be 6 months because you asked us to look at 100,000 emails.
Right. I mean, there's one that we had before that's 140,000 emails, and I never got through all of those. That person ended up going to federal prison, so I'm sure he's not interested right now, but
Yeah.
It really depends upon, I mean, if we had to look at 100,000 emails, we had to do it in 30 days, I probably would have to tell everybody in the office to drop whatever it is you're doing now, because we're all.
And then all the important stuff we're working on
Right.
is ignored.
Now,
Maybe that's the,
yeah, the issue about giving them the table and having them go through it, putting a little bit of the burden on them, actually was the result of some litigation that we had very early on about very big emails. And I'm like, I'm gonna put the burden, if you want us to produce this, I'm gonna put the burden on you to look through this and tell me what you want. Or alternatively, you can narrow the scope of your request. I don't know what you're looking for. I don't particularly care. It's not my job to worry about what you're looking for. It's my job to produce whatever it is we have out there that meets that definition. Because the issue also is, for Open Records Act purposes, the definition of a record is expenditure of public funds, administration of public property, or transaction of public business. So, for example, if my wife emailed me something that says, bring home milk on your way home, that really isn't a record under the Open Records Act that you should be producing. I've had occasions where, some city employee spouse, said, I just came from the doctor and I got diagnosed with this, that, or the other. Probably not something that we're going to produce because it really doesn't fit the definition of record. There's an exemption with regard to people exercising their constitutional rights. So if somebody sends you an email saying, I want you to vote a particular way on a particular piece of item, that probably is somebody exercising the constitutional rights that you probably would not.
So if we're getting all these activist emails on a particular issue, those
Right.
are exempt from the open records?
Yes.
request?
Those are probably exempt because they're people exercising the constitutional right to petition
Unless
their government.
Their name is
Yes.
also a part of a search.
What's that?
I assume they probably lose that if their name is also part of the search.
Well, if the subject matter is part of the search.
Okay,
They probably get pulled. I mean, for example, for OTA stuff, so all the people that sent you something that said either vote for or against the OTA stuff, that's gonna get, if you asked to do a search that had the term OTA, it's gonna capture all those emails.
and what if they wanted the OTA and then a list of names? And let's say one of those people wrote us in favor, let's say,
Right.
and their name was also part of that scope. Would their vote yes on this end up in that?
No.
Okay,
Because that's you exercising your constitutional right to petition your government for redress, so no, I wouldn't give you that one.
okay.
There is a piece of the new legislation that talks about trying to narrow down the search and all that, and it goes on to say, if a public body has engaged with the requester to seek information needed to fulfill the request and to identify the records sought by the requester, including providing the requester with general topics or specific list of records related to the request may be denied if it's still not reasonably specific. That is brand new. And so, I mean, honestly, don't know how often that would come into play. We do get the really broad ones, and usually between Rick and I, we can kind of talk them into narrowing it a little bit, but it just pulls in thousands and thousands. And so that right now, I'm really proud to say, you really like to hear it too, we only have 5 requests that are open of the 248 that we received since October. They are all email, but they are, one of them has been partially fulfilled, but they're not even that old. I mean, well, I have a couple in April and then a couple in May, but it just, so, I mean, they try really hard to get to them as quickly as possible, but it's just really, it's really difficult, and the staff time is what is the issue. Now, I had a request for copies of the referendum petition. Well, you all probably saw those boxes sitting in my office for days. I got to charge 25 cents a page for the first 20 and 20 cents a page thereafter. My staff, I had 3 staff members using different copiers, and it took 3 days, 3 8-hour days to copy on that petition. And I got to charge 25 cents a page. So, and it, I mean, then they paid it. I mean, it was like $700 or whatever, but it wasn't, that didn't nearly cover the cost of what it cost us to do it. But I rarely get anybody asking for paper copies of something that large. But we did for that, so.
So could they have gotten a PDF version of that?
I would have still had to scan them all. It was still been a lot of staff time scanning them. So it's basically the same thing. Either you're scanning it or you're copying it. It's going through the copier.
There a charge per page for scanning, or is it
No,
just like
that's
you
what-
don't get any money?
Yeah, that's what, you know, we've talked about that before at training with David Weatherford and stuff about, you know, you're getting charged by whoever you're leasing your copier from by the page. And so, given that, you should be able to charge them what you're getting charged, you know, I mean, if it's 10 cents a page or whatever. But there's nothing in the act that talks about electronic records or emailed records. And honestly, I'd rather do it that way anyway. It's not about trying to collect a fee. If I can, the faster I can get it out the door, the better for me and market fulfilled. So, I mean, we rarely ever charge a fee. This last year when the email stuff became so voluminous, is when I started sending the stuff out to them. It was before this that said, I estimate that this is gonna be this much, this many hours to search, whatever. And I need you to put up a deposit of half. I mean, and it would be as much as $350 for half or whatever. And so they would just say, never mind.
Oh,
A
okay.
couple of people
Is
did.
there a way we could just provide like a really locked down workstation where if they're, like, they could kind of do their own searches here, but it won't bring up, you know, anything that has anybody in the city attorney's email, like,
No.
there's just not a way we could do that?
And it just has to do with the products that are available for search.
Gotcha.
There have been occasions when people have said, I just wanna review it or inspect it, I don't want a copy of it. And we have brought them over to the city attorney's office, taken the computer off the network so they can't get anyplace else and usually it's body cam footage. Put that body cam footage in and let you watch it. Now, what that person did not seem to understand, because he spent about 2 hours in there watching the video over and over and over again, taking notes. If he would have pulled out his phone and videoed it. But that was sort of, from our perspective, that was kind of humorous. You spent all this time in there taking notes. You could have just recorded it on your phone or nothing. I can't prevent you from doing that.
Yeah, I've had the same person like act like they're hiding because they're taking pictures of the documents and they're like trying to hide from me to do it. And I'm like, oh, I don't care if you take pictures of it. There's nothing that prevents you from doing that. And it's just, it's the same person.
I would ask too, have you seen an increase in requests in the past couple years versus prior?
Yes.
Well, and we've had some contentious stuff, OTA, University North Park, so I could see those generating more, but like of these types that you're getting for police reports, zoning, all that, is that going up too?
The phase one environmental is, I mean, they didn't used to do records requests for that. And I don't know how they got the information, if they just came down to City Hall and asked them or called or whatever, but them going through the open records process, it's kind of been a new thing in the last 3-ish years, 3-4 years, but I get a lot of those.
And that's where having that, it's already been pulled before, here's a quick way to get to that.
Yeah. And yes, I do get duplicates. I had one last week, as a matter of fact, that was one that I had already given out. I thought it looked familiar, so I was able to just throw it in there and move it on. So that's helpful. The new system is very helpful for me anyway, because years ago, our records clerk in the back is the one that got all the records requests. And she retired, she'd been here 29 years. We had a lot of turnover in staff there for a while. We went through COVID. We were in a remodel where we couldn't even get to records for a long time. And so the training of how to do all of that kind of got behind. So I took it over with the intent of giving it back once we got them in and got them trained. But it's just, we've had such a flux in people moving in different positions. Training was difficult, and we're getting back to that, but I'm still doing them. Well, Jamie and I are doing them for the most part. But it's set up to where any of my staff will be able to get in there and do it. But we're doing a lot of cross-training right now on other things, so I've just kept this myself. I mean, it's a lot better than it used to be, honestly, so I can't complain about this system anyway. The emails are the worst, though. They are the worst.
I like the records request in here. It's like records of anybody that requested records.
Yeah, he used to do that all the time. I haven't seen him in a few years. He hasn't been around, but yeah, he used to. And I think, oh no, he's gonna want, because it's not like you made an extra set, because that was when everybody was coming to get paper copies. So you provided the copies to whoever requested it. It's not like you made a duplicate set, so he would ask for like the same thing somebody else had asked for, not have to go copy it again. But yeah.
When did council start using emails? Probably the 90s, early 2000s?
We didn't even have PCs until the mid-90s. When I started here, we had something called the Wang. It looked like it was about this big, and it was the screens that looked like kind of those old video games with the green.
Yeah.
That's what we had. And we got PCs. It was probably mid-90s when we got PCs and started using email and everything else. So council having an email, we didn't do that at the beginning. So I can't even remember when we brought that online, but
So before it was probably just these code stuff, easements or whatever, and then
we would still get them on staff email, but nothing. 35 years, that's how long I've been doing this. The intensity of requests have just gotten higher in the last, I would say, 10 years. Specifically this, before that, we might get 2 or 3 requests other than from staff. Staff's always calling for documentation, which is, I don't count those, but we may get 2 or 3 requests a month or something. It was nothing. But yeah, and there's a lot of things that factor into why that changed. I mean, political dynamic and the whole thing nationwide and everything else, and thinking that they're gonna find something that's not there.
I was gonna say another reason that legislation came forward was a new phenomenon in the last 10 years would be people, making content for a YouTube channel or whatever platform they're on, and they're a First Amendment auditor. I don't know if you had those prior to the last 10 years, but
Yeah. We've had the ones that come in with the video, filming us. And then,
but it's like rage bait is really what that's about, is to build a base, an audience who
Oh, yeah.
follows somebody they're making money off that is what I'm getting
they
at.
try to provoke you.
Yeah, but that's their content and that's their, subscribers, clicks, if they got a Patreon, support the cause. So it's almost a little commercially driven, you could say, for them, motivating them to come and do these antics. But
I did have someone tell me a couple of weeks ago, he wanted some police records, and so I forwarded him, all the links to request a record over there and everything, and he came back and told me that he was not going to do that, that it was my job to get the records for him. And I mean, he just went into this whole litany of whatever, and so I said, okay, I was just trying to speed up the process for you, but that's not a problem, I'll request them on your behalf. I mean, and he was quoting me this FOIA stuff, which we're not under FOIA, that's federal. I mean, ours is a little bit different, but he's quoting me all this law like it's your job, and if you aren't gonna do your job, I will let, blah, blah, blah.
I'll blow you up on social media.
Okay, so for me, I would just want to make sure that we aren't ever using fees or anything as a way to discourage legitimate requests for transparency or information.
No,
So
the act prohibits
just
that.
because we don't want to or because it's hard, but I do agree with, staff time and what it takes to actually research stuff. And then I think if somebody wants the digital copy, then we don't charge them anything, right? Or if they want to come film the thing themselves or take a picture of every signature petition page themselves. So I think we should recoup something to cover that cost, but just want to be careful about not getting into a thing where we're charging people in order to prevent them from.
No, I agree, and the act actually prohibits that for purposes of trying to deter.
Yeah, mostly I think that it came about as a way to limit kind of what I was talking about earlier with those First Amendment auditors. Because when you think about all the things that a municipality needs to get done, and one like Norman has a lot more going on, and just to think that a whole legal department could be pulled off for a request, and it's like, no, we've got a lot. So
AI will be able to do it for us. ChatGPT.
That,
Even though that destroys the entire
petition-
rainforest for every search. Okay, we got 20 seconds left. Any final comment from anybody? Questions? Anything you need from us?
I will go ahead and do that just on a trial basis, just have staff track their time so we can see. For the most part, most of these, the time's gonna be minimal. It's just gonna be the email searches that'll be the big thing, so